Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen. I would like to present you with some data regarding the historical trend on the UTMs and RCD filings at the UIPO and the related COVID-19 impact. So we would see the figures from 2020, 2021 as well. And we will try to draw up some conclusions from those data. So concerning the historical trend, we can see here figures as of 1996, and we can see that there is kind of a fluctuating trend until 2009. So with some periods of growth and decrease, but it's not until 2010 that we have a stable and constant growth that increases even more during 2020 and 2021. But we will see this in more detail later on in the presentation. I would like just you to keep data in mind because it would be useful for us to understand how the COVID-19 impacted the UTM filings, at least at the UIPO. Comparing 2019 and 2010 UTM filings, we have an annual growth rate of 5.6% and an overall growth rate of 63% from 2010 to 2019. We will see this figure again later, and we will compare it with the growth we had in 2020 and 2021. So digging a bit in last 2 years figures, we can see, of course, that during the first months of 2020, January and February, which is the blue line on the left of the screen, we had almost no impact. And this was the period in which, in Europe at least, there was a big uncertainty regarding the soon-to-be declared pandemic. Each state didn't know exactly what measures should be put in place or not. So the impact on filings, I would say neutral. And in February, here we could observe also a bit of increase with respect to February 2019. But then in March, when the pandemic was declared, we indeed had a decrease with respect to 2019, and it also happened the same in April, respectively, with a minus 7.6% in March and minus 11.7% in April with respect to UTM filings. So that was the period in which we saw the biggest impact of the pandemic in filings, because then as of May, we can also observe a slight recovery, which however is not sufficient to put the figures of 2020 beyond what we recorded in 2019. The unexpected situation happened when in June, the filings start to rise incredibly, and we can see here the blue line, which overcome the yellow one until December. So as of June 2020, we have an incredible increase in filings, which go over Q3 and Q4, so over the whole year. And the average growth, it was on a monthly basis of 27%, with a peak in July, when in December, the UIPO registered a plus 40.5% in UTM filings compared to December 2019. I'm talking about direct filings. So without considering also the international registrations we received from the WIPO, which is the graph on the right. We had a huge increase in December, and that could also be explained by the fact that the Brexit would have taken effect as of the 1st of January 2021. The companies, well, let's say, ran and registered more EUTMs and also RCD at the office towards the end of 2020. Now, going to the figures of 2021, we see that the growth in UTM filings continued in Q1 and Q2 with a peak again in March 2021. But this peak could be explained because in March 2020, we started to have the decrease. So we are comparing a period of growth with a period of strong decrease. So that's why this big difference. But anyway, the trend continued until June. And in July, when in 2020, we started to grow at a very fast pace, now in 2021, we experienced a kind of slow decrease. Of course, we are comparing a very fruitful period, which is the second half of 2020, with a fruitful period in the same terms. But of course, we could not register the same growth also in 2021 because we would register more than 20,000 filings per month. So the trend followed the same pace in Q3 and Q4 2021. And we see here the difference towards the end of the year, where around 40,000 UTMs filings in December 2021, but there were less than December 2020 because the Brexit was already in place, so there was not that effect in filings. Going now to RCDs, to the designs, we have here some historical trend as of 2012. We see some difference in the magnitude of figures because we are talking here about tens of thousands and not hundreds of thousands as of the UTM case. And in addition, the growth was in the last decades concerning the designs filings was more stable rather than what happened with the UTMs. The impact of COVID-19 in designs registration was not so high as it has been for UTMs, nor in neither in positive nor in negative terms. I would say that the impact on RCDs of the COVID has been quite neutral as well. And let's see the figures. We can see here that in 2020, which is again the blue lines, concerning the RCD's direct filings, there has been no huge impact. We see, of course, a decrease in March and April, but then in May, we had a recovery again. And as of June, the trend was more or less the same as of 2019. Well, there is the peak in November and December, but there again, Brexit played its role in that. But overall, there are no remarkable differences which we can refer to the COVID-19 on RCD filings in 2020. And as well, in 2021, we see that the trend does not show big differences compared to the previous year. This reinforces again the fact that the biggest impact of COVID at the IPO was in UTM's filings and not in RCD filings. So the impact was, we can say it was quite neutral on design filings. So to draw up some conclusion on this, well, we had an incredible growth in UTM filings during the last 2 years because we went from a 5.6% of average annual growth in the period 2010-2019 to a 12.16% in average in 2020 and 2021, almost 3 times the growth we had in the last decade. In RCD filings, well, the situation, as I said, is quite different because we had an average growth in the last decade of 2.08% versus 2.04% in 2020 and 2021, so it's more or less the same. Overall, the negative impact of COVID-19, it was observed at the office only between Q1 and Q2 2020, more in the specific between March, April, and May, when, however, we started to have some kind of recovery, but the figures were behind the ones registered in 2019. One of the driving forces behind the, let's say, positive impact of COVID-19 is that, sorry for this, China was the main driving force behind the recovery trend because we registered an 88.8% more filings. China has been the main driving force behind the recovery, with almost plus 90% of UTM's filings in 2020 versus the previous year. Also, the Brexit played a key role behind the sharp increase in both UTM's and RCD's filings in December 2020. And we also observed a remarkable increases in some specific UTM classes as of 2020. For example, class 10, which is the one of medical devices, within which falls the face masks, for example, which registered a plus 54% filings in 2020 versus the previous year. We also have to say that this increase in, for example, in class 10 was registered with this magnitude in 2020 and not in 2021. Also, class 35, within which falls the e-commerces and online businesses, also increased, and class 9, which is the IT class, which is the first one in terms of UTM's filings at the office, stayed in its first place, with also an increase in number of filings. The COVID-19 impact was, for the IPO, positive as regards UTM's filings and neutral as regards RCDs, with some negative periods registered in March, April 2020. With this, I finish my presentation. Thank you all for the attention.